In the vast sterile research facility of the United Terran Space Exploration Agency, Dr. J. Park leaned over a microscopic containment chamber, his breath fogging the reinforced glass. The creatures inside were barely visible, tiny, translucent, organisms that seemed more like living threads than anything resembling intelligent life. The Xylori, as they had been officially designated, came from a distant planetary system discovered during a routine deep space mapping mission. Most scientists had dismissed them as nothing more than simple biological curiosities. But Jay saw something different. His fingers traced the digital readouts, watching the complex neural networks of these microscopic beings pulse and shift in ways that defied conventional biological understanding. Dr. Kim Yoon, his lead xenobiologist, entered the laboratory. Her footsteps were quiet, almost hesitant. "What are you seeing?" she asked, joining Jay at the observation station. Jay didn't immediately respond. His eyes were fixed on the tiny organisms. Under the advanced holographic microscope, their internal structures looked like intricate living machinery. Each Xylori was smaller than a human fingernail, yet their biological complexity was staggering. "They're adapting," Jay muttered. "Watch the neural pathways." The Xylori moved with a purpose that seemed impossible for such small creatures. They connected and disconnected, reformed and restructured their internal networks in real time. It was like watching a living computer constantly rewriting its own code. Kim leaned closer. "Their cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever documented. They're not just responding to stimuli, they're actively processing and reorganizing." The research facility was located on Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. Outside the reinforced windows, the stark lunar landscape stretched endlessly, a reminder of humanity's technological achievements. But inside this lab, something far more revolutionary was taking shape. Jay pulled up historical data about the Xylori's home planet. It was a harsh environment. Constant radiation, extreme temperature fluctuations, minimal resources. Survival there would require extraordinary adaptability. These creatures weren't just living organisms, they were living solutions. "We need more samples," Jay said, his voice calm but filled with an underlying excitement. "These aren't just biological specimens, they're potential." Kim nodded, understanding the unspoken implication. In a universe where humanity was constantly under threat from aggressive alien civilizations, the Xylori represented something more than a scientific curiosity. They represented hope. The initial discovery was just the beginning. Preliminary genetic scans revealed something remarkable. The Xylori possessed an unprecedented ability to modify their own genetic structure in response to environmental challenges. Where most species would require thousands of generations to adapt, these creatures could potentially transform within mere days. Jay remembered the briefings about the ongoing conflicts with the Krax Imperium. Humanity's current military technologies were struggling against the massive, technologically superior alien civilization. Traditional warfare strategies were failing. They needed something different, something unexpected. As if sensing the potential brewing around them, the Xylori in the containment chamber began to move with increased complexity. Their neural networks lit up in synchronized patterns, creating intricate, ever-changing geometric designs. "They're communicating," Kim whispered. "But not like any communication we've ever seen." The Xylori didn't use chemical signals or sound. Their communication was pure information, complex, dynamic, instantaneous. Each movement was a message, each restructuring a conversation. Jay smiled. Most scientists would see these tiny creatures and dismiss them, but he saw potential. He saw a solution to humanity's greatest challenges. The Xylori weren't weak. They were waiting to be understood. Outside, Jupiter's massive form hung in the darkness, a silent witness to a discovery that would change everything. Humanity was about to learn that true strength wasn't about size or initial appearance. True strength was about adaptability, about potential. The first genetic modification chamber was cold and silent. Dr. J. Park watched as the first Xylori subject trembled under the quantum genetic manipulation beam. Sung Ho, The lead technician adjusted complex molecular synthesizers with careful hands. Initial experiments were brutal and precise. The tiny Xylori organism barely resembled its original form after the first transformation cycle. Its neural networks expanded exponentially, creating intricate biological connections that looked more like advanced computer circuits than living tissue. Dr. Kim Yoon monitored biological stability. Each modification risked complete organism collapse. They needed something more than simple genetic restructuring. They needed a complete biological revolution. The research team worked in shifts. Some believed they were creating a weapon. Others saw it as a scientific breakthrough. But everyone understood the stakes. Humanity faced constant threat from the Krax Imperium, a ruthless alien civilization that had already destroyed 3 human colony worlds. Muscle fibers began developing within hours. Where the original Xylori had been fragile and transparent, these new versions showed increasing structural density. Their microscopic frames started building complex protein structures that mimicked advanced combat biomechanics. "We're not just changing them," Sung-ho remarked during one late-night session. "We're giving them purpose." The first successful prototype emerged after 72 continuous hours of genetic manipulation. The transformed Xylori was no larger than a human hand, but its potential was unmistakable. Neural response times had increased by 4,000%. Muscular density showed capabilities far beyond any known biological organism. Psychological conditioning became the next critical phase. The team developed specialized neural interface protocols that would allow the modified Xylori to process combat information at speeds that would make human military strategists seem slow and primitive. Small test chambers became proving grounds. Each modified Xylori demonstrated capabilities that defied previous understanding of biological potential. They could analyze complex tactical scenarios in milliseconds. Their reflexes made current robotic systems look outdated. Military representatives began showing increased interest. Initially skeptical, they now saw potential where others saw only strange experimental subjects. The modified Xylori represented something entirely new. A living weapon system that could adapt in real time. Ethical debates raged within scientific communities. Was this genetic modification, biological engineering, creation of a new sentient species? The lines became increasingly blurred with each successful experiment. Sung-ho often worked closest with the experimental subjects. He noticed something unexpected during later modification stages. The Xylori weren't just responding to genetic changes. They seemed to be actively participating in their own transformation. Their neural networks showed signs of predictive adaptation. It was as if they understood the process happening to them. They weren't passive subjects but active participants in their own evolutionary journey. "They're not just changing," Sung-ho told Dr. Park during a progress report. "They're choosing to change." The research facility became a sealed world of constant innovation. Outside, human colonies continued their daily struggles against galactic threats. But inside these laboratories, something revolutionary was taking shape. By the 3rd month of experiments, the modified Xylori showed capabilities that shocked even the most optimistic researchers. They could process complex mathematical equations while simultaneously tracking multiple tactical scenarios. Their biological structures had become living computers, adaptive and responsive. Dr. Kim Yoon realized they were creating more than a weapon. They were creating a new form of intelligent life. Each modification cycle revealed deeper layers of potential. The Xylori were transforming from simple microscopic organisms into something humanity had never imagined possible. The first complete combat prototype stood ready, barely 6 inches tall. It represented humanity's most sophisticated biological weapon. Its eyes, now sophisticated quantum sensory arrays, could detect movement across multiple electromagnetic spectrums. As facility lights dimmed and another experimental cycle completed, something shifted in the research chamber. The modified Xylori weren't just subjects anymore. They were becoming something else entirely. The Krax invasion fleet approached Earth's outer colonies like a swarm of metallic locusts. Massive battleships blocked starlight. their weapon systems primed to obliterate human settlements. Standard defense protocols had failed repeatedly, leaving humanity on the brink of total destruction. Sung Ho stood beside the 1st Battalion of modified Xylori warriors, 200 tiny beings, each no larger than a human hand, prepared for deployment. Their eyes gleamed with an intelligence that seemed almost alien, even to their human creators. Tactical formation. Alpha, Sung Ho commanded. The Xylori moved with perfect synchronization. Where humans saw weakness, these modified organisms embodied lethal precision. Each warrior carried advanced molecular disruption weapons, their bodies themselves transformed into living combat systems. The first engagement happened near the Proxima Centauri colony. Crack's destroyers approached, confident in their technological superiority. They had crushed dozens of human defensive lines before. This would be no different. They were wrong. The Xylori struck like a quantum storm. Their small size became an unexpected advantage. Crack's targeting system struggled to lock onto creatures so minute and fast-moving, where a human pilot would require seconds to calculate a maneuver. These modified warriors processed entire battle scenarios in milliseconds. One Xylori warrior, designated Unit 73, penetrated a massive Crack's battleship's primary reactor chamber. Its molecular restructuring allowed it to slip through microscopic hull breaches, moving like liquid metal through complex mechanical systems. The ship exploded from within, its massive structure breaking apart in silent, spectacular destruction. Battlefield. Reports came in quickly. 200 Xylori warriors had effectively destroyed an entire Crack's invasion force, consisting of 17 battleships and thousands of combat units. Military strategists couldn't believe the data streaming across their holographic displays. Dr. J. Park watched the initial combat footage with clinical fascination. The Xylori moved like living algorithms, each movement calculated, each decision instantaneous. They weren't just soldiers. They were a new form of intelligent combat system. Crack's communication networks began spreading rumors. Something had changed in human military capabilities. The weak species they had consistently defeated was now unleashing something completely unexpected. Strategic adaptation became the Xylori's primary combat characteristic. They could instantly recalculate battle strategies, modify their molecular structures to resist specific weapon types, and communicate complex tactical information faster than any known communication system. A single Xylori warrior could now effectively neutralize what previously required entire human squadrons. Their neural networks processed threat scenarios with mathematical perfection, turning biological limitation into unprecedented strength. The outer colony defenders watched in awe as these tiny warriors turned incoming massive Crack's assault waves into scattered debris. Each Xylori moved with a purpose that transcended traditional understanding of warfare. Sung Ho monitored the first major engagement, his hands steady on the quantum communication interface. The warriors weren't just following programmed instructions. They were learning, adapting, evolving in real time. They're writing their own combat algorithms, he muttered to Dr. Kim Yoon, who stood beside him. The Cracks began experiencing something they had never known before. Uncertainty. Their vast technological superiority suddenly meant nothing against these microscopic warriors who could transform, adapt, and destroy with terrifying efficiency. By the combat's conclusion, 17 major Crack's battleships had been completely neutralized. 200 Xylori warriors emerged without a single casualty. Military historians would later call this the moment when everything changed in galactic conflict. Humanity had transformed the smallest, most seemingly insignificant organisms into the most sophisticated weapon system the universe had ever witnessed. The Xylori were no longer experimental subjects. They were the future of warfare. The galactic communication networks buzzed with unprecedented information. Rumors spread faster than light itself. The humans had created something extraordinary. Where civilizations once saw a young, somewhat primitive species, they now witnessed a terrifying transformation. Alien diplomatic channels carried whispers about the Xylori, small creatures that could destroy entire battle fleets. living weapons. That thought faster than most advanced computer systems. The fragile species humanity had discovered had become something entirely different. Sung Ho watched as the first diplomatic transmission prepared to broadcast. The Xylori representatives were no longer simple experimental subjects. They had developed their own culture, their own understanding of existence that blended human strategic thinking with their unique biological perspective. The Crack's Imperium began to fracture. Their intelligence networks reported impossible scenarios, entire invasion fleets neutralized by creatures smaller than a standard combat drone. Military commanders who had once laughed at human potential now trembled in their command centers. Dr. J. Park understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just about military superiority. It was a fundamental shift in how intelligent life could be understood. The Xylori represented something more than a weapon. They were a new form of sentient existence. Communication between different galactic civilizations changed dramatically. The Xylori brought a new kind of diplomacy, one based on rapid information exchange, adaptive thinking, and unprecedented strategic depth. Where traditional negotiations took months, they now happened in moments. Their neural networks allowed them to process multiple diplomatic scenarios simultaneously. A single Xylori diplomat could communicate with different species, translate complex cultural nuances, and predict potential conflict points before they even emerged. The transformed Xylori showed capabilities that defied previous understanding of intelligence. They could analyze economic systems, predict technological developments, and understand complex social structures with microscopic precision. Alien research teams became obsessed with understanding their transformation. How could such small creatures develop such extraordinary capabilities? The humans had done more than create a weapon. They had unlocked a new form of evolutionary potential. Sung Ho noticed something extraordinary during diplomatic meetings. The Xylori were no longer just following human instructions. They were developing their own philosophical understanding of existence. Their perspective combined human creativity with their unique biological adaptability. Military strategists across multiple civilizations studied the Xylori's combat techniques. Their ability to transform, adapt, and overcome seemed to challenge fundamental laws of biological limitation. Each engagement became a masterclass in strategic thinking. The galactic power balance shifted. Civilizations that had previously considered humanity a minor species now watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. The Xylori represented something entirely new, a living system of intelligence that could adapt faster than any known technology. Dr. Kim Yoon published groundbreaking research documenting the Xylori's evolutionary journey. Scientific communities realized they were witnessing something unprecedented, a species that could consciously guide its own evolutionary path. Alien diplomatic records showed increasing respect. The Xylori negotiated with a combination of mathematical precision and unexpected creativity. They could predict conflict points, suggest complex resolution strategies, and understand multiple perspectives simultaneously. The transformation wasn't just biological, it was philosophical. The Xylori were creating a new understanding of intelligence, of potential, of what it meant to be a sentient species in a complex universe. Sung Ho often reflected on their journey, from microscopic organisms in a research facility to diplomatic representatives reshaping galactic understanding. The Xylori had become something extraordinary. Rumors spread about their origin. Some believed they were a weapon. Others saw them as a new form of life. But everyone understood one thing: the universe had changed. The smallest could indeed become the most powerful. The Xylori continued their journey, adapting, growing, transforming. They were no longer just humanity's creation. They had become humanity's most extraordinary legacy. 50 years after their initial transformation, the Xylori had become more than humanity's weapon. They were a civilization, complex and revolutionary, standing as equals among galactic species. The first Xylori diplomatic delegation prepared for the Galactic Unity Conference. Sung Ho, now an aged advisor, watched them with pride. These tiny beings carried the weight of a new understanding of existence. Their society had evolved beyond military purpose. They built complex cities that looked like living mathematical equations, structures that could adapt and reshape themselves based on community needs. Where other civilizations constructed static buildings, Xylori settlements breathed and moved like organic systems. Education became their primary focus. They developed learning systems that allowed instantaneous knowledge transfer. A young Xylori could absorb centuries of complex information in moments, processing and understanding at speeds that made traditional learning seem primitive. Dr. J. Park's original research had created something far beyond a weapon. The Xylori had developed art forms that combined biological communication with quantum mathematics. Their music was a living language. Their visual representation shifted and changed based on emotional frequencies. Technological development accelerated. Xylori researchers solved problems that had stumped multiple civilizations for generations. They didn't just create technology, they became the technology, blurring lines between biological intelligence and mechanical systems. Their relationship with humanity remained complex. They were neither servants nor children. They were partners, collaborators in a grand evolutionary journey. Human scientists continued working alongside Xylori researchers, each learning from the other. Planetary restoration became one of their primary missions. Worlds damaged by centuries of conflict found new life through Xylori intervention. They could read a planet's ecological history, understand its fundamental biological rhythms, and help it heal. The Crax Imperium, once a terrifying threat, now sought Xylori diplomatic counsel. The very species they had attempted to destroy now helped them solve complex societal challenges. Transformation had become their greatest weapon, not destruction, but understanding. Sung Ho watched a group of young Xylori practicing complex communication techniques. They moved like living data streams, their bodies shifting with intricate neural patterns. Each movement was a conversation, each gesture a complex mathematical equation. Scientific communities across multiple star systems studied them. The Xylori represented a new model of intelligence, adaptive, empathetic, continuously evolving. They had transformed from experimental subjects to galactic problem solvers. Their population grew slowly, but with purpose. Each new Xylori was a carefully considered addition to their collective consciousness. They didn't reproduce randomly, but with strategic understanding of community needs and potential contributions. Dr. Kim Yoon, now a respected elder in xenobiological research, documented their continued evolution. The Xylori were writing new chapters. In understanding of life, intelligence, and potential, they were living proof that weakness could be transformed into extraordinary strength. Diplomatic records showed their growing influence. Xylori representatives solved conflicts that had lasted generations. Their ability to understand multiple perspectives simultaneously made them extraordinary mediators. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations waited to hear the Xylori's perspective on galactic challenges. What was once a microscopic organism now spoke for collective understanding. Sung Ho smiled, remembering the first tiny creatures in that research facility on Ganymede. They had been nothing then, fragile, seemingly insignificant. Now they represented hope, potential, the extraordinary possibility of transformation. The Xylori took the stage, small, intricate, powerful. They were neither human nor alien. They were something entirely new, a living testament to the idea that true strength isn't about size or initial appearance. True strength is about potential, about the ability to grow, to change, to understand.